Hello everyone, I'm Anita with Anita by Design, and today I'm going to show you guys how to make your very own clutch purse. Now for those of you who follow me on my blog, anitabydesign.com, you've been seeing some of the clutch purses I've made to go along with my DIY projects. And based on the comments, you guys are really liking the purses and you want to know how to make them. So today I decided I'm going to show you step by step how to make your own clutch purse. So let's get started. Let's talk about the supplies that you're going to need. You're going to need, of course, your fabric. And you're going to need an outer fabric, and you want to cut a piece that is 13.5 by 13 inches. You're also going to need a lining fabric, the same measurement, 13.5 by 13. And one last piece with the same measurement, you're going to need a heavy-duty fusible interfacing, and I'm using Pelon 808, and I'll leave a link in the description box below so that you can find this particular interfacing. So on those three pieces you'll need 13.5 by 13. You're also going to need fusible fleece, and you'll need one piece measured 13 inches by 10 inches. Okay, now for cutting your fabric and your interfacing pieces, you can use, if you have it, you can use your rotary cutter along with your cutting mat and your lip edge ruler. And then you can just use the grid and the measurements on your mat to measure out the fabric and make your cuts. However, if you don't have a rotary cutter or you prefer to use scissors, to make it easy for yourself, you can use a template. Now I created a cardboard template to use when I'm cutting my pieces out. I usually do it with the rotary cutter, but I have done it with scissors. And so you are going to cut out a piece of cardboard, and this is just a light piece of cardboard. You can even use a manila folder, whatever, to make your template, and measure 13.5 by 13 and mark your measurements on your template so that you can know which side is the longest. So these are my 13.5 edges, and I just marked 13.5, and then 13 mark your measurements. Okay, then you're going to use this to place on top of your fabric, and then go ahead and trace this square onto your fabric, your outer, inner, and your fusible interfacing, and then go ahead and remove your template and cut it out. And you can make a template for your fusible fleece also. That way it's easier. You don't have to worry about using your ruler to make the measurements each time. And then you can just keep this template for future purses when you get ready to make them. Okay? Now, so there's your fabric and your template. You're also going to need a grid ruler, or if you don't have this, you can use your yardstick, but you need something for taking measurements. You're going to need your seam gauge, and we're going to use this at the sewing machine for taking a few measurements. Of course, you will need your straight pins, and we're going to be using a woven fabric, which is recommended. So you will just use regular ballpoint straight or regular straight pins. All right, and if you're cutting your fabric instead of using a rotary cutter, of course you're going to need your fabric scissors. But when you're making your template for cutting your fabric, make sure you use your paper scissors. Don't use your fabric scissors on cardboard, because the cardboard will definitely dull the blades of your fabric shears. Okay. Your marking tools, of course, you're going to be making some marks as we go along onto the fabric for the seams that we'll be stitching. So whichever type of marking tool you choose. Now, of course, you're going to need thread in a coordinating color, or if you choose a contrasting color for the fabric that you're going to be using. Now, to attach the purse frames, we're going to need a few things. First, you're going to need your purse frame. And I purchased my frames from an Etsy store called Upstyle. And the owner's name is Robin Grawunder. And I found her some years back when I was looking for tutorials on how to make a clutch purse, and I found a Martha Stewart video, and Robin was on the Martha Stewart show demonstrating how to make her purses. So I ordered my purses, or my clutches, or excuse me, my purse frames from Robin over at Upstyle. And when you go over to her Etsy store, and I'll post the link down in the information box below. When you go to her Etsy store, she has all different sizes. The size that I will be using today is 6 3/4 inch frame, and the instructions that I have came with the frame. So whenever you go there to order your frame, it comes with instructions for the size frame that you will be using. And the tutorial that I will show you today are based on the instructions that she gives with the frames. And with her frames, you can order them with or without the little metal loops to add a chain, a shoulder strap to your purse. So you're going to need your purse frame. You're going to need tape, because we're going to use the tape to hold the frame onto the clutch while the glue dries. And I just use a clear tape that Robin recommends. And then you're going to need glue. And I use Gutermann HT2, and this is what Robin uses. You're going to need a strong glue that will hold a strong bond, because you don't want to put your frame on your purse and carry it and have it fall apart. So make sure you get a strong glue. There are crafting glues on the market. If you're going to use a crafting glue, make sure you use one that bonds fabric to metal or metal to fabric, okay? Don't use one that's fabric to fabric or fabric to paper or anything like that, because it won't hold. All right, so I'll leave a link in the description box below for this glue also. There's a store on Etsy that carries it. All right. Now, if you don't want to use tape to hold your frame on, you can use a binder clip if you have some of these around the house, or you can use a regular clothespin. Or if you are a quilter or a sewer and you have the, what do you call, Wonder clips, excuse me, the Wonder clips. My husband just reminded me. The Wonder clips, those are great for this because they're really small, much smaller than this, and they will hold the frame on to the purse really nicely. So you can choose whichever type of tool you want to use to hold the frame on while the glue is drying. That's about it. Now, I want to talk to you guys about fabric choices. Now, Robin recommends cotton fabrics for making these purses. And when you go onto her Etsy store, you'll see all the beautiful, absolutely beautiful purses that she has made using cotton upholstery fabrics. And they're just absolutely gorgeous. I have not used cotton yet. Today will be my first time. I want to do that to demonstrate it to you guys. But I have used mostly wovens. And I do recommend using a woven fabric because the knits don't hold up as well. And I know because I have actually made one purse with a scuba knit, and this went with my beautiful green vintage dress that I made over on my blog, and you can see that if you go there, anitabydesign.com. So I made this, and it's cute, but it doesn't hold up. It's not as sturdy as the ones I've made with the woven fabrics. So some of the fabrics that I've used are this beautiful green brocade, and I made this one to go with a cute vintage outfit that I made. I've also used a velvet. This is an embossed velvet, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And you can see here I've attached a chain, okay? And if I want to carry it without the chain, I can just open it, and there you have it without the chain. Here's another one with velvet, and this is really cute for the holidays. It has little glitter snowflakes on it, okay? I've also done a sequin purse. And here's another brocade with a chain. Now you'll notice that I have embellishment on some of my purses and some without. For the embellishments, this one I just used a little charm. I just used a charm. For this one, I made a bow to go with the purse, and I placed a ring around the bow. Same thing here. I made a bow and placed a ring on it. And I'll show you guys how to make the bows at the end of this tutorial. We're going to go ahead and get started. Go ahead and collect all of your supplies, and I will meet you guys back here. Okay, to start our project, we're going to begin with our pressing. And what we're going to do is we're going to press the fusible interfacing onto the outer fabric. So grab your outer fabric and your fusible interfacing, and what you're going to do is you're going to trim 1/8 of an inch from the outer edges, the perimeter of your fusible interfacing. Then you're going to fuse it. You're going to bond it to the wrong side of your outer fabric. So after that is done, we're going to take, and make sure you get a very secure bond. You don't want any bubbles in here because it will show on the outside of your purse when you're done. After you have fused your interfacing onto the outer fabric, take your fusible fleece, and we're going to fuse this onto the back of the fabric. So your fusible fleece has the glue side with the little glue bubbles. You're going to place that face down onto the wrong side of your outer fabric where you have fused the interfacing, and you're going to center it. Now you can eyeball it, or you can use your ruler. Make sure when you place your fusible fleece onto your outer fabric that you're lining up the edges. So this is 13 inches, so you want to make sure that the long edge of your fusible interfacing is lined up with your outer fabric. So go ahead and eyeball it, or you can measure. So I'm going to just do a quick little measure here and make sure I have the same amount of extra fabric hanging outside here on both sides. And you go ahead and measure yours. Okay? The measurement that yours is, it doesn't matter. Yours may be different from mine, but just make sure you get as close as possible to even on both sides. So go ahead and place that, and then you're going to wet your fusible fleece and use your press cloth so that you don't accidentally get any glue onto your iron. We're going to press the fusible fleece onto the outer fabric starting at the center. So just press your iron to the center, hold it for about 10 seconds, and then you're going to work your way outward to the edges of your fusible fleece. Holding for about 10 seconds, working your way out in all directions. So after you have worked your way out in one direction, then go ahead and work your way around, going outwards from the center in all directions. And you want to make sure you have a secure bond. After you have fused the entire piece, let it sit and cool for a minute, and then go back and test to see if the edges lift. If the edges lift, then you need to make sure you run that press or run the iron over that again to make sure that it's completely sealed. Okay, so after you have finished pressing your fusible fleece onto your outer fabric, then meet me at the sewing machine with your lining and this piece, and we're going to go ahead and start sewing the purse together. Okay, take your outer fabric and your lining fabric, and we're going to pin these two pieces together along the long edge, the 13.5-inch edges. So take your outer fabric, place it against your take your lining and place it against your outer, making sure that you have the right sides lined up. So this is my 13.5-inch edge, top and bottom. So we're going to go ahead and pin this together. And you can use your binder clips or your wonder clips for this if you want. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to insert a 1/2-inch seam from one edge to the other. And we're doing a straight stitch, of course. And we're going to backstitch and stitch all the way to the other end. Backstitch. Okay, then you're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the opposite side. So you go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you at the pressing station. Okay, your lining should be attached to your outer fabric along the 13.5-inch edges on both sides. And this is the other side. So your stitches should run across this way on the 13.5-inch edges. Now we're going to take this and turn it inside out, or right side out. Okay. And then we're going to fold right on the seam. Press it flat right on the seam with your fingers, and then we're going to press that with our iron on both sides using your press cloth. Go ahead and press that. Okay, I'm going to turn it over and do the same thing on the right side, on the outer side. Okay, then let's do our pressing on the other edge. Turn it over and press on the outer fabric. Okay, there we have everything pressed flat. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to continue constructing the purse. Now that we have pressed our seams, we're going to fold the purse in half with your finished edges on top. And we're going to line up the top finished edges. And you can use your binder clips, your clothespins, or your wonder clips, whatever you have, to hold that in place. And this one is very strong, so I really don't need to use many. I'll go ahead and use 2, one on each edge. And you go ahead and use however many clips you feel is necessary for your comfort. Okay, so that's just to hold that in place. And make sure when you put your clips on that your edges, the top of your purse, is even. Okay, make sure that it's even. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a French seam on both sides, on the edges, the side edges of the purse. So for the French seam, we're going to sew a seam 3/8 of an inch from the top down to the bottom of one side of your purse. So go ahead and insert it at your 3/8 inch seam line. And backstitch. And then sew all the way down to the end. And backstitch. Now we're going to take our scissors and we're going to trim off up to 1/8 of an inch from that seam. So we're going to trim that off. And here on the bottom corner, we're going to trim off diagonally about 1/8 of an inch. And if it clips into the seam, it's okay. And you'll see why later. So go ahead and clip off about 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. If you have lining fabric that is hanging past your outer fabric, you can go ahead and trim that before sewing it, and I'm going to do that just so I have a nice even edge here. So I'm going to trim off that excess from the lining. Okay. And then a 3/8 inch seam. Back stitch. Back stitch. And again, we're going to trim off to within 1/8 of an inch from that seam. And clip 1/8 of an inch from the corner diagonally. Okay, now remove your clips. By the way, if you don't have binder clips or wonder clips or clothespins, you can just use pins to hold that top piece together. Now we're going to turn the purse with the lining side out. Okay, make sure those corners are out. Now fold it, the side edge together evenly along that seam line. And let's place a clip there again. And the same thing on the other side. Flatten it out, making sure that the seam is right along the top, along the edge, and place a clip. And again, when you're placing your clips along the top, make sure that that top is even. You don't want one side higher than the other. Okay, we're going to sew a 3/8 inch seam again from top to bottom. So always start with the back stitch. Back stitch. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Starting and ending with a back stitch. Remove your binder clips. And you see, you have a perfectly enclosed seam for the inside of your purse. Okay, now we're going to create the gusset for the purse. And the gusset is the part on the bottom, the little triangle that we're going to sew in that will help the purse to stay upright when you put it down or set it on a table. Okay, so go ahead and take your purse. We've already inserted our French seam. So we're looking at the lining. Let's turn it right side out so that the outer fabric is showing. Pushing out that corner, and you can use your point turner. I forgot to mention that you can use, this will be one of the tools. So go ahead and push out the corners as much as you can on both sides. Okay. So there you have it, right side out. Now, to form the gusset, we're going to take the seam and press it this way, forming a triangle. And for the French seam, you can flatten it to one side or the other. So go ahead and turn it to one side or the other. That'll help it to lay flat better. So with that lying flat, it'll be easier to sew over it. Now, take your clear ruler, your grit ruler, and what we're going to do is we're going to measure from one edge to the other edge, and it needs to measure 1.5 inches. So take your ruler and line it up to where it meets 1.5 inches, to where it measures 1.5 across. So mine is about right there. So my ruler starts here and the 1.5 inch mark is there. Now if you went this deep in, then your measurement is going to be 2.5. Or if you don't go far, or 2.5 or whatever, however deep you go. If I went here, I'm just under the 1 inch mark. So make sure that your measure is 1.5 inches from one edge to the other edge, forming your triangle. Then take your marking tool, whichever tool you're going to use, and go ahead and make that line. Okay, so there's my line, and we're going to insert a stitch from one end to the other, back stitching at the beginning and the end, being careful as you go across this seam here because it's pretty thick, going over that French seam. If you have a clapper, then you can use that to flatten the seam. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So press or place the fabric under your oppressor foot with that line that we drew at the center of your presser foot, and that's going to be your guideline. And start with the back stitch. We're going to go do the same thing on the other side. So put your finger under there and flatten the French seam to one side, forming a triangle. Take your clear ruler, measure across 1.5 inches, mark the line, your stitching line, then sew that seam. Now what we're going to do is we're going to trim off this seam allowance to within 1/8 of an inch of that seam line that we just created. So trim it off, leaving 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on both sides. Then we're going to turn it again, wrong side out, to where your lining is facing you, or facing out. And we're going to sew another seam to create a finished inside. So this is going to be another French seam for the inside of your purse at the gusset. So flatten it as best you can. And then go ahead and sew a 3/8 inch seam from one edge to the other. So place the edge of your purse onto your needle plate at the 3/8 inch mark on your needle plate and backstitch. And backstitch. Same thing on the other side. And then turn it right side out. And there you have formed your gusset for the bottom of your purse on both sides. Okay? Now we're going to go to the next step. Okay, now that we have the body of our purse finished, we're going to attach the purse frame. But before you do that, I want you to take your purse, the body, to your pressing station and press it from the inside and the outside to make sure that you don't have any wrinkles before we attach the frame. So once you've done that, take your purse and set it in front of you. And the frame, when you open it, it has these chambers on both sides. And what we're going to do is we're going to squeeze glue into the two chambers and then place them on top of the edges, the top edges of the purse. But before we do that, we need to find the center of the purse. Otherwise, it could be off-centered and it won't look right. So to find the center, fold it flat and place it down in front of you. And then you're going to take your clear ruler and measure the length of your purse, and it could be different from mine. So measure the length of your purse. Mine is 11.5 exactly. So my center is going to be 5 3/4. So I'm going to take my chalk roller or use whichever marking tool that you want to use and go ahead and make that mark on the top edge on both sides. Five 3/4 for mine. Now, you could also use pins. If you wanted to use a straight pin, you can just stick your straight pin at the center mark temporarily. So this is going to help us to find the center mark when we get ready to put the handles on. All right, so let's take our purse frame, not handle, frame. Take your purse frame, set that aside, grab your glue. Now, actually before we do that, we need to test to see where it's going to sit. So open up your frame, place it inside, and the way you're going to place your frame onto the fabric is, this is where the clasp is. When you open your clasp, this edge should be on your center mark. So I'm going to place that inside and put that edge right at the center mark. That way I know that it's centered. So I'm going to push the edge of the purse down into the frame that way. Then let's place the other side. I'll turn it around to face you. Oops, If it comes out, that's okay. Just put it back on. This is just a test. Okay. And then place that on the center where we marked it. Okay. And looking at it, make sure that your clasp is centered with the center mark that you made on your purse on both sides. Then what we're going to do is leave that in place, and we're going to place tape on the edges so that when we get ready to place the frames back on after we insert the glue in the chambers, we will know where to place the frames. I'm going to use this clear tape and just place it right along the edge of where that purse frame is. And that is just a guide for me when I get ready to place them back on after the glue is inserted. Same thing on the other side. Okay, now I have my placement marks, so I can just remove this, set the body aside, grab your glue. Now, if you're using this Gluterman HT2 glue, you want to make sure you're in a ventilated area because it has fumes, okay? And you don't want to be in a closed-in room using this stuff, all right? Okay, take your frame and flip it upside down, holding on to it. Now, you will see there is a chamber in there. We're going to squeeze the glue into that chamber, but we're going to start at this corner where the edge of the frame is and go to the other corner where the edge of the frame is. We're not going to go past this edge of the frame, and we're going to do that on both sides. Now, if it's your first time doing this, I suggest doing one side at a time. So squeeze your glue into here, attach it to the purse, and I'll show you how to do that. Let it dry for about an hour, and then go ahead and do the other side. I'm going to do both sides at the same time because I've done this many times. Okay? So take your glue, and the thing I like about this Gluterman glue is that the nozzle is small enough to where it fits down inside of the chamber. So I'm going to start right here at the edge, and I'm going to squeeze. And you don't need to use too much glue to where it's going to squeeze outside of the frame once you attach it to the purse, but you do want to make sure you use enough to where you're going to get a bond. Okay, that's one side, and I'm going to do the other. Let's put that cap back on. Now, if you're using this glue and you happen to get some of the glue on the outside of your frame, don't worry about it. Let it dry. You don't need to try and clean it off while it's wet. Let it dry, and after it dries completely, you will be able to just peel the glue off. So, take your purse, your body, and remember, we have our guidelines, the tape guidelines. You can't see these because it's clear tape. I don't think you can see it, but when you're working on your own, you'll be able to see it. We have our center mark and our two side guidelines. So I'm going to take one side, and the other is going to flip upside down like that. So the glue is still sitting in there and it's not spilling out. But because this glue is so thick, I don't have to worry about it spilling out. It would have to hang there for quite a while for it to spill out. So take it that way and go ahead and place it onto the edge of your purse using your sides and your center as your guideline. And then once it's on there, go ahead and push down on the frame and pull up on the purse so that you're getting that edge of the purse right up into that frame securely. Pushing down on the frame and pulling up on the edge of the purse. Okay? Once you've done that, go ahead and turn it over. If you're doing two sides at the same time, flip this one up and do the same thing. We're going to place the center at the center mark and our ends at the tape marks, and same thing. Press down on the frame, pull up on the bag. All the way across. Okay, now we have the frame on and we need to secure it. So I'm going to use tape. Again, if you want to, you can use your wonder clips, your binder clips, your clothespins. So I'm going to use this clear tape, and I'm going to start at the center and press it down onto the frame and then squeeze it onto the fabric. All right? I'm going to do it on the other side of the clasp. Press it down onto the frame and squeeze it onto the fabric to make sure that it holds. And I'm going to do the same thing on each end, making sure that the fabric or the tape is not on top of the frame, the edge of the frame on the inside, just inside the edge. Press it down and squeeze. Press down and squeeze. And then you're going to turn it around and do the same thing on the other side. And this helps to keep it secure. And we're going to let this sit overnight. You're not going to try and use your purse the same day that you make it, because it needs time to cure and to get a strong bond. Okay, there we have our purse. We're going to let this sit overnight. Let it set up overnight, and then tomorrow you will be able to fold in the corners and attach your accessories or your embellishments. Now I'm going to show you. I won't do it on this one because this has to set overnight, so I'll set that aside. But for demonstration purposes, I made another one and it has set overnight. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to remove the tape. From both sides of the frame. Now that we have removed all of the tape from the frame, you go ahead and tug and make sure you have a secure bond. You tug on it all the way around and make sure it's secure, and if it's not, you can go ahead and put some more glue in. Like right here, I have a little bit of looseness, so I will go in tonight and squeeze some more glue in there and secure that with a piece of tape to make sure that that gets a tighter bond. Okay, so once that's done, you will look and you see on the inside we have our purse frame. So what you're going to do, I'm going to show you from two different angles. First, I'm going to show you from the front. You're going to fold this in under the frame on both sides. Fold the fabric in under the frame on both sides. And then fold your frame in, making sure that it's centered. Oops. And oops. Takes a little working with sometimes. And clasp it. Okay, and there you have it. Now let me show you from the side angle. So you're going to push in, okay, pressing this out, and fold in and clasp it. Okay, same thing on the other side. Push it in, kind of pinching the sides, press down, and that one came out. But when you're working with it and you're not recording a video, it'll be a lot better for you. So press it, making sure that you're pulling those edges out and clasp. And there you have it. Now, I've embellished this one with a bow and a little ring. So I'm going to show you how to make this bow and attach a ring if you desire to have this type of embellishment on your purse. Or you can use whatever you like to embellish your purse. So meet me at the sewing machine. Actually, let me show you what you need to do to prepare your fabric for your bow. So for this one, I'm going to use the same outer fabric for the bow. And I have this piece right here, and I have applied the same heavyweight fusible interfacing to the back of it that I used for the purse. And the measurement for this one is 13.5 by 8.25. And I just cut a size. I didn't measure what size I wanted. I just kind of placed it next to the purse to see what size I want. You can make whatever size bow you want to make. So I just, kind of placed it against the purse to see how wide it was going to be, and that's good for me. So again, this one is 13.5 by, what was it? 8.25. So go ahead and cut whatever size you want. Fuse it on the back, and then we're going to take it to the sewing machine and sew it together. Okay, what you're going to do to make your bow is you're going to fold your fabric in half, right sides together, okay? And then you're going to insert a line of stitching, 1/2 inch, from one corner to the edge, pivot, go sew over about 3 inches maybe, and backstitch. Then again, from the corner up to the corner, pivot, stitch over about a few inches, and backstitch. So what you're doing is you're leaving an opening to turn the fabric right side out. So after you've sewn in that stitch, go ahead and trim your corners diagonally. And go ahead and trim off up to within 1/8 of an inch on the sides. And on the top, we're going to trim 1/8 of an inch up to the end of the stitching, and then I'm going to go in diagonally. Again, trim off 1/8 of an inch up to the end of the stitching, and then go in diagonally. I want to leave that flap so that I'm able to fold it in when I get ready to hand sew the edges together. So now we're going to turn this right side out. And it's pretty stiff because we've used the heavy duty interfacing, but we need that stiffness to get a crisp bow. Okay. Pushing out those corners with our fingers first, and then we'll get our point turner and go in and push them out to sharp corners. So take your point turner and push the edges out so that we have a sharp edge on all 4 corners. Okay. And one last corner. Let me push this one out just a little bit more, make it sharper. Okay, so there we have it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fold in the seam allowance on the opening. And then with a needle and thread, I ripped mine open. I don't think I backstitched enough, or if I backstitched at all on that one edge. So with a needle and thread, we're going to go in and we're going to whip stitch this closed. And then after you stitch that closed, go to the pressing station and you want to give this a good press on both sides. After you do that, come back here and I'll show you how to attach the ring to your bow. We have our bow all pressed and flat. And so what you're going to do is you're going to measure the top edge of your bow, the long edge. Mine is 7 inches, so I'm going to find the center mark, which is 3.5, and that's right here, and then I'm going to make a mark. That will let me know that's the center of my bow. Okay, so mark your center on your bow. Grab your ring if you're going to be placing a ring, or you can make a, the center of the bow out of fabric to place around your bow. Now this ring opens on the back, and I'm going to use my little flat nose pliers to open it. So I'm just going to pull it apart. Oops. Pull it apart. So you're going to take your bow, and at that center mark, or actually you're going to do kind of an accordion fold. And what I'm doing is I'm pinching, 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 and pinching until I don't have any more fabric. So I can still see my center mark, and that's where I want to place the center of my ring. So this metal part will be placed on that mark. So I'm going to put it on top like that and then squeeze it in place. I'm going to turn it over. Now, depending on what type of embellishment or ring you're going to be using, you will have to work with it. But I'm going to do that and pull this back to the closed position with my flat nose pliers and flatten it. And there you have it. And then I'll just play around. You play around with your little gathers to get it, to however you want it. And then once your purse has dried overnight, tomorrow you can go in and attach your bow to your purse. And the way I attach mine is I use a hand needle and thread and just tack it onto the purse from the outer to the inside. And I do that on all 4 corners. 2 on the top and the 2 at the bottom. And then once you have this on here, you can play around with where you want your bow. Like I don't really want my bow flared up too much over the top, so I kind of push it down to wherever I want it. So you place yours wherever you want it, and then that will complete your purse. Well, folks, that concludes our project for today. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope to see lots of purses. When you guys do make your purses, make sure you share with me. I want to see what you've done and how much you're enjoying making these clutches. You can tag me in your social medias. I'm Anita by Design everywhere. So tag me in your photos, and I hope to see you guys real soon with another tutorial, because I know you guys have been asking for more, and I'm coming back with more and more and more. Thank you so much for stopping by, and remember, when you live in your design, it is from there that God shines. I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to check me out at AnitaByDesign.com. Bye-bye.